Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called The Next Level Science of Sound Healing with John Stuart Reid. Discover how to heal yourself and evolve your consciousness through the power of frequency medicine and cymatics. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I am delighted and curious to be here with you, getting to explore some of the latest frontier science from a remarkable teacher. His name is John Stuart Reid. He's an acoustic scientist. He's the inventor of the cymoscope, and he's really done so much work behind the scenes to synthesize the leading edge of the sound healing field. We're going to hear a lot about that today. We're also very excited we're going to be able to announce a 12-week deep dive program with him, and we'll share a little bit about that towards the end of the hour. So with that said, welcome back, John.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for that lovely introduction. You know, how I actually ended up where I am today, teaching sound therapy, music medicine, and so on, is a story that goes way back to, well, 25 years ago. I can hardly believe it's so long. But in 1997, I planned to conduct some experiments, acoustics experiments, in the Great Pyramid. And but 3 weeks before going out to Egypt for this particular series of experiments, I quite badly injured my lower back, and to such an extent that I actually thought at one point I would not be able to travel to Egypt. I was in so much pain. So that's a little bit of the backstory, but what then happened was I did, of course, manage eventually to get into the pyramid, set up the experiment, which, by the way, was a cymatics experiment, using the sarcophagus, the 3.7-ton granite box in the king's chamber, as a resonator, and then stretched a membrane across its open top. I was in agony as I was doing all of this. But what then happened, two things really that were completely life-changing. The first was that a series of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs began to appear in the sand that I had sprinkled onto this membrane stretched across the sarcophagus. So I was exciting the sarcophagus with sound, of course, and then these hieroglyphs were appearing, which was, you know, an astonishing moment in my life. And then the antiquities inspector who was with me, he wanted to help at that point. Previously, he'd been standing there looking rather bored, but now he was really excited, and he wanted to know how it was that these hieroglyphs were appearing in the sand. So anyway, then we carried on with the experiments, and he really did help. But 20 minutes later, 20 minutes into seeing this series of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, I suddenly realized that there was no pain in my lower back. And of course, you know, need to realize that at that moment, I thought, I know what's happening here. These are endorphins flowing in my bloodstream, masking the pain. And I thought to myself in that moment that when I get back outside the pyramid, the pain will come back with a vengeance. But the pain never did come back. So that really got my attention, and I wanted to understand what was the biological effect that had not only mediated the pain, it had completely banished the pain. It never came back. And then, of course, the other aspect to that amazing research was these hieroglyphs. And what that said to me in that moment, again, was this could be a new tool for science. And so in the 25 years since then, I have obviously delved very deeply into the biology of how that pain was banished. And I think I now have the answers. And then also having developed the cymoscope instrument, which is the world's first instrument that can make sound visible accurately, not in a digital sense, but as an analog instrument.
Well, it's an amazing story, totally mind-blowing, and so it makes it clear that maybe some of what's going on is not just discovery of new things, but some rediscovery of knowledge that might have been lost. So let's dive into some of what you've discovered, and we're going to structure today a little bit differently than typical, because I know you've got some experiments and you've got some specific things that you want to do, and so instead of me asking a lot of questions, I just want to give you the stage and really share and unveil so much of what your research has led to.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Well, what I'd like to begin with actually is by asking this question. Have you ever wondered where the electricity comes from in your body? You know, we've all heard about our nerves conducting electricity, of course, but have you ever wondered where it actually comes from? Well, I'd like to share with you very briefly, first of all, before I run this experiment that you see behind me, I'd like to explain where that electricity actually comes from. And this is actually based on research by Professor Gerald Pollack's lab. And what he discovered was that every cell in your body actually generates electricity. And the way that that works is that when water, which of course all cells contain water, when that water reaches a boundary condition, in the case of a cell, obviously that's the membrane that surrounds the cell. When that water reaches a boundary, it changes its atomic structure and it becomes what's termed as structured water, or sometimes being called exclusion zone water. And what that means is it has actually changed its structure to such an extent that it's become sticky. You know, when you pour water into a glass and you see this, what we learned at school is called the meniscus around the edge of the glass, where the water starts to climb up the wall of the glass a little way. Well, that is actually all due to electric charge. So what happens is that when the water in the cell reaches the boundary of the cell, i.e. its membrane, it actually becomes negatively charged and has this kind of sticky property. And so the difference in potential between that negative charge and the water that's inside the cell, which is neutral or slightly positive, means that there's a potential for electric current flow. And that's literally the electricity that powers all of our bodies. And without electricity, of course, there can be no life. So I'd like to show you this little experiment now. You can do this at home. As a matter of fact, in the first module of this advanced course, I'll be giving detailed descriptions in the deepening practices documents as to exactly how to run this experiment. So let me just show you, first of all, what we have here. I can bring it in. We have here a meter. You see that meter? This is a little ammeter. Basically, it's got 13 microamps for full scale, and it's connected via a cable. You see this cable here. In fact, if I turn the ammeter around just briefly, just to show you the back of it, there it is, just two connections, a red and a black. Bring it back to front. Right, so this red and black, let's just show you a little jar here. This is actually a laboratory glass jar, but you could use an ordinary, any kind of glass receptacle. And you see here, it's got a little crocodile clip here, which you just put onto the edge of the glass. The other cable, this one here, the red, has got a little device on the end that I can just dip into the water, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some medical grade water. You don't have to use medical grade water, by the way, but this is medical grade water. You could just use ordinary tap water. And I'm just filling this up somewhere near the top so that there is indeed a meniscus showing there. Put that back here. So now I'm just going to show you the temperature of this water, because this is an important aspect of the experiment. It'll just take one moment to come up. Well, it's looking like it is 21 degrees in the lab here. You can see 21 degrees. So that water is 21 degrees. What I'm now going to do is to take this electrode here. You see the electrode. And I'm just going to dip it in to the center of the water. And I want you to watch the display on the ammeter. There, can you see? There is just over 5 microamps flowing. Looks like 6 microamps, something like that. And that's obviously the water at 21 degrees. Now what I'm going to do is to take from this incubator here, which is, you can see, is at 37 degrees. I'm going to take the water from here. I'll just turn that off as well now. And now let's just check the water at 37 degrees. Again, I'm going to dip in the electrode. Whoa. You see what difference that makes? That's a significant difference. So why is this important? Well, what we're showing here is that the difference in temperature is creating obviously far more electricity than we had at the normal room temperature. So that's 37 degrees or 98.6 in Fahrenheit terms. And that represents obviously normal body temperature, normal blood temperature. What does this all mean, and why is this all important? Well, it's actually extremely profound. And the reason that it's so profound is the root of this heat that we're talking about here in the water, in this case 37 degrees. The root of that heat is sound. So you probably haven't thought of heat being created by sound, but indeed all of the biochemical reactions that are happening in your body all of the time that make you warm, basically, all of those reactions are actually creating sonic inelastic collisions, which are then creating the heat, which is why our body is at 37 degrees or 98.6 Fahrenheit. In other words, sound is the root of the heat, and therefore that heat is what's creating ultimately the electricity in your body. And I think that is extremely profound indeed. So we're going to move on now to another aspect of the work that is in this course. So these are little excerpts from the course material itself. I'd like to talk now, shift subjects to consciousness. Now, obviously, no one knows what consciousness really is, but one aspect of consciousness we can talk about, and that is our thoughts. Now, just as what I'm mentioning here about the temperature of water and how that's related to the molecular vibrations in the water, which from a physics point of view are indeed sound, well, the same thing actually applies to our thoughts. So when you have a thought, the first thing that happens in all the neurons in that particular part of your brain is that there has to be molecular vibrations. These are the biochemical vibrations in your brain. And again, from a physics standpoint, that is sound. Now, that sound that's created every time you have a thought doesn't just stay, of course, in your cranium. It literally reverberates throughout your whole organism. And when you know from the foundational course earlier this year that the Niels Bohr Institute in Denmark, I think it was around 2012, made this astonishing discovery that the nervous system of our bodies, its primary role is actually to conduct sound. So the electrical impulses in the nerves are literally a byproduct of the sound because the nerves have piezoelectric properties. So the first thing that happens is they call them solitons, but they're basically sound pulses. So in this case, coming back to this idea of thoughts creating sound, when you have a thought, the first thing that happens is these biochemical reactions in your brain create sound. That sound then reverberates throughout your whole organism. And when that sound reaches the membranes of cells in your body, one of the physics principles, of course, that I mentioned again in the foundational class is that whenever you have sound and you have a membrane, you have to have a cymatic pattern. So all of these thoughts that we're having pretty much all of the time are creating sound that reverberates throughout our whole organism and literally creates cymatic patterns on the surface membranes of every cell in your body. And I think that's a pretty profound thought as well. And of course, there are many implications to that research, which I'll go into in great depth in the advanced course. So now I'd like to move on to the subject of frequency medicine. I'm using this term as a kind of, well, an umbrella term, let's say, because, of course, frequency medicine can encompass both light and sound. So in this particular part of the teaching, I'd like to just mention the idea of light in terms of light therapy. You may not know that all the different colors of light in the rainbow are actually extremely healing. And I just want to run through a few of them with you now. So red light, for example, relieves chronic pain, diminishes scars, diminishes wrinkles, reduces psoriasis lesions, improves hair growth in people with androgenic alopecia, prevents recurring cold sores from the herpes simplex virus infections, improves the health of joints, and much, much more. Yellow light is best known for skin cell rejuvenation and its soothing anti-inflammatory benefits. It also boosts lymphatic flow, which removes toxins and waste from the skin, and it promotes anti-aging. Blue light is a powerful range of frequencies for accelerating wound healing and ulcer healing. Green light promotes collagen production, reduces inflammation and pain, breaks up melanin clusters to remove age spots, and improves energy levels. So, they're just a few of and these are all, by the way, all of those references come from scientific papers that I'll be sharing in the course. So here, of course, we're talking about different frequencies of light and a very, very powerful form of therapy, again, related to sound, which I will go into in great depth in the course itself. Now, just moving on to frequency medicine, let's say part 2, which concerns sound, of course. And I wanted to mention at this point a new discovery that I made just a few months ago relating to the production of, or let's say the rejuvenation of white blood cells. So I think those of you who took part in my foundational course, we covered the experiments that I ran, well, up to 3 years ago now, actually, where Professor Sungchul Ji and I discovered that music and specific sound frequencies actually regenerate old red blood cells. This was an amazing discovery and has significant implications for medical science. But in much more recent times, I made another discovery, in this case with white blood cells, mainly macrophages. The reason I say mainly macrophages is because you may know that when blood is removed from the body, most of the white blood cells die fairly quickly. And of course, here I am actually dealing with blood from a blood bank. So most of the white blood cells are actually macrophages, which is one of the classifications of white blood cells. And what I found was that certain frequencies in the music and certain pure frequencies, when applied to the blood, actually create, rejuvenate, let's say, the white blood cells. So in other words, we do a blood cell count on white and red blood cells before we immerse the blood in music. Then after immersing the blood in music, we do for 20 minutes, we then count the cells again. The reds have always been an amazing percentage higher than before, in the control. The whites are a little less, a few percent less than the reds, but still the idea that we can actually boost our immune system by simply immersing ourselves in beautiful music, for example, or specific frequencies like from crystal bowls or Tibetan bowls or a gong or a harp. To me, this is extraordinary, and this is a really wonderful future that lies ahead for medicine with music. So the last little segment that I'd like to share with you now concerns another discovery that I made in fairly recent times. And this concerns what's termed heterodyning. Now, heterodyning itself is not the discovery. Heterodyning usually concerns the mixing of frequencies together, and usually the word relates to mixing of frequencies in electromagnetism. In other words, say in a radio, for example. But this discovery concerns heterodyning in audio signals. So what happened here was that Anders and Kachina, who are with us today and will be joining us very shortly to provide a mini concert, Anders and Kachina sent me some of their albums, and I actually looked at some of their albums on our lab spectrum analyzer. And I was very, very surprised to see the result. And this result, which you're going to see in a few moments, the video actually of this spectrum analysis, just a short clip. But what you're going to see is that the frequencies in their music, and this was an excerpt, by the way, from the Pleiadian Prayer track of this album, the frequencies are going right down to the 12 hertz band on the spectrum analyzer. Well, when I tell you that the shape of the curve, the characteristic curve of this analyzer is kind of a bell-shaped curve, what that means is that if the 12 hertz band is dancing up and down, then frequencies way below 12 hertz are also present, right down perhaps to 4 or 5 hertz. So then I had a discussion with Anders and Kachina, and I shared this discovery with them, and they were really astonished because, well, as Anders said, the very lowest frequencies in his voice would, on a good day, would go down to 60 hertz. So here we're talking about 12 hertz center frequency on the analyzer and possibly even 4 or 5 hertz below that. So why is this so important and exciting? Well, because I'm sure that many of you already know this, but the vagus nerve for optimal stimulation in the body actually requires those kind of very, very low frequencies, somewhere between 5 and 10 hertz for optimal stimulation. And when the vagus nerve is optimally stimulated in this way by sound, then we have so many benefits. For example, reduction of chronic inflammation, reducing the rate at which we age, boosting sexual function, and so many other wonderful health benefits come from vagus nerve stimulation. So this discovery that was made purely accidentally by looking at one of their albums on this lab spectrum analyzer has surprised me greatly. I've spoken with many other acousticians and sound engineers, and apparently no one has yet seen this with their own eyes. So I'm really surprised and very excited about this discovery. Since testing Anders and Kachina's beautiful music, I've also gone on to test many other albums that we have, and Annalise and I have in our collection here. So I'm very excited to be able to share that information in the advanced course. So please now, if we can see the spectrum analysis video, and then following that, I will introduce Anders and Kachina. So there you see, you're hearing Anders' voice, and you see the 12 hertz band, the very bottom, very left-hand side of the screen. And then you're going to hear Anders stops there. At that moment, Anders stops singing, but the music continues, and even the music is producing 12 hertz dancing band. So isn't that extraordinary that is happening? And so with that, I'd like now to hand over to my friends and colleagues, Anders and Kachina, who are going to play for us some of their beautiful music.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, John. And hello, everyone. It's amazing to see actually what my singing and Kachina's keyboard sounds, what they both seem to contain and emit in terms of frequencies, and that we actually cannot hear, but that we still feel and that the body receives. So I wonder really how many more fascinating discoveries about the impact of music that we're going to make in the time to come. So Kachina and I would like to give you a short experience of the very music that you just saw in John's spectrum analyzer. And the piece is called, like John said, the piece is called Pleiadian Prayer. Enjoy.
Well, that was exquisite. So, John, I wonder whether you want to reflect a little bit more on why was just shared has such a healing potential, building on everything you just shared.
Thank you. I would love to. That was so beautiful, so beautiful. And then when we remember that those frequencies in that Pleiadian prayer excerpt are reaching right down to, 12 hertz on the analyzer band, but then where we know the shape of that bell curve of the filter that's allowing that 12 hertz to dance up and down, we then know for sure that frequencies way below 12 hertz are actually present, and they're being created automatically for us. So, and those frequencies are so deeply healing, not only for the vagus nerve, but for many other aspects of our biology, all of which, of course, I will share in depth in the course itself. And of course, I will also share a long list of other albums that I have found, including more from Anders and Kachina and other artists where I found this heterodyning effect. So I'm very excited to be able to share that discovery with everyone.
Mm. Well, you covered a lot of ground in your exploration there, and I wanted to kind of maybe touch upon a few threads to kind of thread it together before we talk more explicitly about your upcoming program. So the experiment you did with the water, so what I was taking away from that is also that our body is sort of optimized for the electrical transmission, which then is connected to the sound. So you're kind of implying that our body temperature even has been optimized for transmission of sound. Is that correct?
It is indeed. This is one of the things I was mentioning, Stephen, in that little demonstration, is that we don't tend to think of temperature, the heat of our bodies, as creating sound. But from a physics perspective, that's exactly what it is. So in other words, one of the teachings, for example, from the foundational course is that sound gives birth to light. In fact, you cannot have light without sound, because from a physics perspective, sound is actually creating the light. So the sound has to come first. So in our bodies, the temperature, which is 98.6 or 37 degrees centigrade, that temperature is actually creating the sound. Or which came first, the sound or the temperature? Well, actually both are probably occurring at the same time. But the essence of it is, and the exciting thing from my perspective, is that sound is literally the energy that then creates the temperature, the heat in our body. And also from the discovery that Gerald Pollack made in his labs, it's the infrared light that actually builds the structured water in the cells. And it's that structured water that then gives us the electricity that enables us to live, basically. So, and it all comes back to sound. You know, I find that extremely profound. So, in other words, when we are immersed in a sonic environment, whether that be music or crystal bowls or Tibetan bowls or a gong or whatever it is, that's all actually powering the electricity mechanism in our bodies and giving us more energy, more life force, basically.
Truly fascinating. It makes me think about the phrase, in the beginning was the word, and that so it's like the sound is upstream from all the other manifestation processes in our body. And so if we're working at that level, we're working kind of at the causal level of whatever dysfunction there might be in our body, that we're sort of like cleansing it from the upstream position, it sounds like.
Yes, indeed.
Beautiful. Well, I know there's so many different facets of how this all weaves together. I'd love to just kind of paint the picture from what your original 25-year ago experience in the King's Chamber and healing your own body. Maybe go back and help us understand that experience from some of the physics principles you've just shared.
That experience that I had in a King's Chamber all those years ago, you know, it has put me on this long path to discover the biological mechanisms that underpinned that healing that day. And one of them, of course, concerns the production of oxygen in my body when I'm in a low frequency environment, or indeed, if any of you are in a low frequency sound environment, then more oxygen is made available. Coming back to the music blood experiments that I mentioned a little earlier there, oxygen is actually the key way that the cells are rejuvenated. What's happening is that the pressure from the sound is kind of mimicking what our heart does. You know, the heart is a pump, and it's pumping blood around the body. But also, if you think about it, it's creating low frequency pulses of sound. And those low frequency pulses of sound are what's causing the oxygen that's dissolved in the blood to be absorbed by the hemoglobin molecules, and therefore, you know, powering the tissues of our body. So basically, the low frequencies in the King's Chamber that I was deploying that day, creating those beautiful hieroglyphic patterns in the sand, those low frequencies were actually causing my body to create more oxygen, or let's say to absorb more oxygen that was already dissolved in my bloodstream. And that oxygen was what was responsible for breaking what's called the splinting cycle. You know, when you have a cramp in a muscle, how it's really painful. Well, what happens in a back muscle, say, when there's an injury, it tightens up and that causes a spasm, basically. So I was spasming as I went into the pyramid that day, and that spasm was extremely painful. But the oxygen, which was released by the low frequency sound, that then released that spasm, and therefore the pain went away. And that was a kind of a moment, life-changing moment for me.
Fascinating. And now also, like I wanted to draw the thread together. You were talking about how every membrane in the body, so you have sound, which is pulsed through the electrical conductance of the nerves. So the nerves actually are carrying sound, and electricity is, then there's also the cymatics on the cellular level. So how does that connect in with what you saw with the Egyptian hieroglyphs on top of the sarcophagus?
That's a good question, Stephen. Well, it's all to do with cymatics, isn't it? So the sounds that we have, I was mentioning about our thoughts, that they create sound. Of course, there are many other mechanisms in our bodies that are creating sound all of the time. But those sounds, literally, wherever they originate in our body, are creating cymatic patterns on the surface membranes of our cells. It's a similar principle to what I was observing that day in the Great Pyramid all those years ago. Wherever you have sound and you have a membrane, there has to be a cymatic pattern. Of course, usually these patterns are invisible to the naked eye, to the unaided eye, but with specific lighting conditions, for example, in the cymoscope instrument, we can make those sounds visible as they, in this case, imprint onto the surface of water. And indeed, of course, in our bodies are full of water. So all of the sounds around us are continually organizing the molecules in the visceral waters of our bodies, but also at a cellular level on the surface membranes of every cell in our body. Beautiful patterns are emerging whenever there is beautiful sound present. And the beauty that we're talking about here, the cymatic patterns at the microscopic scale, are not just, pretty patterns. Basically, they have a really beautiful healing effect. And the reason that happens is because the surface membranes of all the cells in our body contain hundreds of little integral membrane proteins that project from the membrane itself. And this is the way that the cell communicates with its brother and sister cells. It's the way that the cell takes in nutrients and excretes waste products and so on. All of those little IMPs, those integral membrane proteins, are beautifully massaged, gently massaged, whenever we are in a musical soundscape, a musical environment. And that is, one of the mechanisms, one of the many biological mechanisms by which music and sound frequencies support healing in the body.
Truly mind-blowing stuff. Thank you, John. And I know a lot of this is leading to breakthrough new technologies as well. And you've developed your own. You want to share anything about some of where this is headed in terms of new frequency medicine technologies?
Well, I would love to, actually. And one of the really, for me, really exciting aspects to the discovery that Professor G and I made with the music blood experiments is this simple idea that the oxygen that's dissolved in the blood cannot be bound to the hemoglobin without some low frequency pressure, right? So the pressure in our body comes from the heartbeat. And this is why, of course, if our heart stops beating, well, we know what happens. We would lose consciousness within seconds, right? Because there's suddenly no pressure pulse, in other words, no low frequency sound pulse from the heart to cause this oxygen binding. So then if you project that into a clinical environment, let's think about it from the point of view that you have a patient prone in a bed who perhaps has a weak heart or has poor respiration. Well, the result of that would be that that patient would not be receiving sufficient oxygen. And then when we know that oxygen really is at the root of all the healing mechanisms in the body, so clearly that patient lying there without sufficient oxygen could be helped by low frequency sound. In other words, if the medical beds of the future had low frequency transducers in them and could simply be switched on at a moment by clinical staff, that would actually hugely support that patient's level of oxygen and therefore the level of healing that was going to occur naturally in the body. Because remember, only the body can heal itself. What we are doing with sound and indeed with light frequency as well, light frequency medicine, is we're simply supporting the body's natural healing mechanisms.
Truly amazing, and I can see the future of medicine being really so centered around the frequency medicine and cymatics and light medicine, as you describe it, because it just works on a very deep cellular level and complements whatever else we're doing. Well, let's dive into the opportunity that we're so blessed that first of all, you partnered with us on your next deep dive program. It's called Advanced Secrets of Frequency Medicine, Sonic Science, and Cymatics. It really offers the best opportunity to get the state-of-the-art frontier science around this, around sound therapy. It's about healing yourself. It's about understanding the cosmos and ultimately about shifting our society forward as well. You can find it at frequencymedicinecourse.com, frequencymedicinecourse.com. This is going to be a 12-week deep dive where John is going to distill out so much of the leading edge science, stuff that he has not revealed publicly before, and really provide foundations for understanding the frequency medicine of the future and how that applies in your own life. So John, I'd love for you to share sort of first on a high level, like why have you architected this program in the way you have? And I can read out the module titles and you can give us a preview of what's coming in each.
Sure, I'd love to. Obviously, what we're doing here is we're taking the foundational information that was provided in this foundational course and expanding it hugely. So it's very, very important, obviously, for anyone who wishes to acquire this level of knowledge in the advanced course to also have taken the foundational course. And I know that's why you've very cleverly bundled them together. It's very important because actually the advanced information you would not be able to fully grasp it without taking the foundational course.
Great. Also, we'll share a little bit more about that foundational course, but we said it's just one of the best received, most exciting courses we've offered. It's 7 weeks of really diving into this science, and so the 12 weeks build on that, and that's going to get bundled in all together so you can catch up, that you can really do this deep dive and really be part of an extraordinary group of pioneers. So Module 1 in the new program is called Frequency Medicine Part 1, Exploring the Miraculous Healing Power of Light Frequencies.
Yeah, so in this opening module, we're going to be exploring photobiomodulation, quite a big word, but basically it's a form of therapy involving light. And it includes the biological mechanisms by which infrared light, red light, blue light, green light, yellow light can reverse many medical conditions, including chronic pain, fatigue resolution, peripheral nerve damage, psoriasis, dermatitis, wound healing, fibromyalgia, migraine, cellulite reduction, wrinkle reduction, and much more. And, one of the aspects that I forgot to mention, by the way, earlier was this lovely idea, that the medieval architects, these beautiful cathedrals and the stained glass, how healing that is. And so anyway, we'll cover all of that in Module 1.
Module 2, Frequency Medicine Part 2, Exploring the Miraculous Healing Power of Sound Frequencies.
Yes, thank you. In this module, we're going to focus on the application of sound frequencies to support a wide range of medical conditions, as distinct from musical frequencies, which we're going to discuss in Module 7. But in this module, we'll explore the fascia system of the body, considered by many scientists to be the body's meridian system. And we'll also show how meridians can be stimulated by sonopuncture.
Module 3, the holographic nature of sound and music and the laws of cymatics.
Yes, in this module, it's action-packed, actually, and it explores the world of cymatics, in which we're going to take an exciting deep dive into the nature of holographic sound, creating a world of shimmering beauty, which the cymoscope instrument reveals for us. And we'll explore how our cells use holographic sound and how dolphins can see with holographic sound when swimming in dark and murky waters.
Module 4, the role of consciousness and intention in healing.
Yeah, we begin Module 4 with a discussion regarding the nature of thoughts, how at their root lies the biomolecular vibrations of neurons, which physics defines as phonons or simply as sound. In this light, sound can be considered the basis of consciousness, and these sounds reverberate throughout our entire body, carrying our thoughts to our cells. And we'll learn from Annalise Reid, my lovely wife, how the power of consciousness can be used to reverse virtually any disease, for which Annalise herself is living testimony.
Module 5, the healing power of crystal bowls, gongs, Tibetan bowls, and the didgeridoo.
Yeah, this module focuses on the therapeutic power of these traditional healing instruments, each of which will be discussed in terms of its spectrum analysis, as well as by the cymoscope instrument. And a special series of music blood laboratory experiments will be conducted with these instruments to reveal for the first time the effects of their complex soundscapes on the longevity of red blood cells and white blood cells.
Module 6, the therapeutic power of vocal sound.
Yeah, in this module, we're going to learn that the sounds we make are actually highly amplified. Sorry, the thoughts that we make are actually highly amplified sounds that originated in the neurons of our brains. And seen in this light, our voice is not only an aspect of our consciousness, it's also an extraordinary acoustic amplifier. And we'll learn that when we sing, we are actually singing not only in sound, but also in infrared light, which is the language of cells. And we're also going to dive deeply into vocal stimulation of the vagus nerve and nitric oxide, learning fascinating scientific principles and the huge range of health benefits to be gained.
Module 7, Music is Medicine, Present Day and Future.
Yeah, in this module, we're going to take a really deep dive into music medicine, the sonic interconnectedness of the mind-body system, and we'll discuss holistic medicine, or functional medicine as it's sometimes referred to, in which all aspects of the patient, including their emotions, are considered. And in this expanded medical model, a wide range of vibrational and energetic modalities are available to support the patient's physiology, including the healing powers of music as medicine.
Module 8, the sacred geometry of cymatics.
What a wonderful subject. In schools and colleges, geometry is often taught in dry, dispassionate terms. Yet, when considered in terms of its relationship with sound and cymatics, geometry is a fascinating and exciting subject, as this module bears testament in the universe, in architecture, in crystals, in music, and in life.
Module 9, Healing with Art Therapy.
Yeah, Module 9 will actually focus on cymatics as a form of art therapy, in which we're going to explore how cymatic principles can be used to create art, whether drawn, painted, sculpted, or experienced through dance and through beautiful sounds, such as the wind in the trees, whale song, bird song, musical sounds, voice sounds, and more. And we'll explore crystal art, in which small chips of crystal are applied to a printed cymaglyph, creating a new 21st century art form, I should say, that carries not only the healing power of the cymaglyph, but also the healing power of crystals.
Such cool stuff. So Module 10, the curious concert pitch conflict.
Proponents of 432 Hertz say that, and this is a quote from Reuters, 440 Hertz tuning has no scientific relationship with our universe and causes the brain to become agitated, and that the Nazis in World War II used this frequency against their enemies to make them feel and think a certain way, end of quote. Is this true? Well, in this module, we're going to examine these questions and assertions, weighing the evidence and providing clarity from a grounded scientific perspective, with conclusions drawn from empirical research on human blood and from critical thinking.
And Module 11, Ancient Egyptian Sonic Science, connecting back in with your origin story there of this work.
Indeed. So the foundations of many sciences, of course, were laid by the ancient Egyptians, and some of their discoveries influenced Greek and Roman science, including acoustic enhancement of public buildings, which was, of course, created by Vitruvius, inspired by acoustical knowledge obtained from the ancient Egyptian priests. Now, despite the rise of science and technology since the Renaissance, we still have much to learn from the ancient Egyptians, as this fascinating module explores, not only from a historical perspective, but from my own acoustics research in the Great Pyramid and in the Red Pyramid.
Amazing stuff. And finally, Module 12, Integration.
Yes, integration. Well, of course, this is extremely important in this case, because this advanced course has so much information to be able to digest. So Module 12 is actually reserved for integration of the advanced knowledge shared in modules 1 through 11. And I will summarize the key elements of each of the modules before opening the floor to an in-depth discussion, during which you'll have the opportunity to raise questions and gain clarification on any aspect of the foundational and advanced course teachings.
Well, it is truly an unprecedented, totally mind-blowing, and paradigm opening program that you've created here. And again, it's laid out in full detail at frequencymedicinecourse.com, frequencymedicinecourse.com. So when you join, you get not only these 12 modules with John, which is going to include time, interactive time, Q&A time, there'll be experiments, there'll be demonstrations, you're going to get recordings, video and audio, plus word-for-word transcripts to work with, study, and highlight. There'll be small group time to connect with other participants, weekly exercises, a Facebook community to support your journey. And as I mentioned, we're going to get the full 7-week companion course, Explore the Secrets of Sonic Science and Cymatics. That's going to be bundled in. We don't have time to go into all the details on that, but it was an incredibly well received and a mind-blowing program. And you get all 7 modules plus the bonuses when you sign up for this advanced program. In addition, on the page, there's a number of extra bonuses that enhance your journey. There's a Sound Therapy 201 PDF article from John. There's also a Therapeutic Power of a Vocal Sound PDF article. And there's a special bonus that you get when you sign up by midnight tonight. This is a video dialogue between John and Nassim Haramein, who's a really mind-bending physicist and really a pioneer in looking at the structure of the universe. It's called Quantum Physicist Nassim Haramein, Enlightening the Halls of Science. And John, you know, maybe in your own words, you could share, why is Nassim's work so fascinating and relevant to what you're doing?
Well, Nassim and I share many ideas, actually, have done over the years. And, you know, in this particular instance, it's a really beautiful, deep conversation about actually going right into ancient Egyptian technology, which is one of his favorite topics and one of mine too. And also we talk significantly on gravity, which is a wonderful aspect of our universe.
Well, that's your extra bonus to really get these two leading edge thinkers together in a really unique way to explore the frontiers of physics and sonic science and how they work together. So it's an amazing program. You are going to be in for a treat. So we've kept the investment really accessible for this, given all the value, the 12 modules, the original 7 modules, all the bonuses.
Is 3 payments of $347, or save 10% when you pay in full with 1 payment of $946.
A note to folks who did the first program, you do have your own special link to sign up that doesn't include the bundled offer, so you'll be getting that in your email.
The course begins October 23rd and runs Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern.
And you can get all the details again at frequencymedicinecourse.com. And I always encourage people to really take the time now, while you've just received this incredible download of fascinating information from John, and really tune in if this is the next step for you. And if you're getting a yes, read through the page as well, read through the testimonials from folks who went through the 7-week program. And if you're getting a yes, there's really no risk. There's a money-back guarantee of satisfaction, and just a lot of breakthrough new understandings are possible when you take this adventure. So I love some of the testimonials. Rose said, this course was just awe-inspiring, and John's passion is infectious. His knowledge and expertise are experience expert level. Superb course, beautifully delivered, so inspirational. Really, this is a life work offered to you in a distilled way, beautifully presented, and John's passion and enthusiasm for this work is very infectious. So you're in for a treat, and you're in for an adventure if you choose to join at frequencymedicinecourse.com, and you get that special bonus with John and Nassim Haramein when you sign up by midnight tonight. So John, what an awesome adventure already today, and I know so much more to come. Anything that you want to share with folks who are considering joining you for the advanced program?
Sure, thank you, Stephen. You know, our world is in a very different place than it's ever been. And with that comes more stress and more uncertainty for everyone. This advanced course offers powerful tools and insights to help you reach a place of vibrant health, not only for yourself, but also to support your friends and your loved ones with your newfound skills and knowledge. You know, each of us have the power to create our own experiences of life. And I imagine that this course will enrich your life in so many ways. I do hope you'll join me.
Well, thank you, John. It is an incredible blessing to receive this offering from you to all who join you. Really, I just know so many more people are going to be healed and open to new possibilities and really advance careers in different ways. And this is revolutionary and evolutionary content. So thank you, John, for offering it. And again, for all of you who are out there, you can find the full details at frequencymedicinecourse.com, and you get the special bonus with John and Nassim Haramein when you sign up by midnight tonight. Many blessings, and thank you all for joining.